Okay, welcome everyone to Catalyzing Change Week 2025, our fourth day of Catalyzing Change Week. Today, we are here with a lovely board of people, and they'll be talking about the implications of the 2025 Nairobi Roundtable proceeding on NGO sustainability. We just have a message. Wait, let me make sure I'm sharing my screen with sound. Sorry. You just have a quick video from our members. You can get started.
Welcome to day 4 of Catalyzing Change Week 2025. The UNHCR in April 2025 recorded that there were approximately 122.1 million forcibly displaced people in the world. How do we provide support services, assimilate refugees into societal systems? How do they afford basic rights, even as they flee widespread violence, hunger, and conflict? Our theme for today reflects the issues around civic participation, peace, and justice in the journeys of refugees and migrants. Change is only lasting when people have a voice in shaping it. Civic participation is about more than being present. It is about building systems where every voice carries weight, and where communities can take part in designing their own futures. Peace and justice are the foundations on which all progress depends. They take root when dialogue replaces division and cooperation overcomes conflict. And in the stories of refugees and migrants, we see both struggle and strength. Displacement tests resilience, but it also reveals new possibilities for innovation, solidarity, and renewal when dignity is protected and contributions are valued. This day invites us to listen deeply, to question what justice truly looks like, and to imagine how inclusive societies can be built stronger and more united. Welcome to the sessions presented by Catalyst Now.
Great. Okay, just some quick housekeeping. We ask that you do keep your video on so we can see you. If you could change your name and your company so we know who you are. Obviously unmute when you're going to speak. If you have any problems or any questions, feel free to please reach out to me. And most importantly, please do enjoy our session today. And for those of you who are joining us who are not yet members of Catalyst Now, we please do invite you to apply to become a member. Membership is free and you get a ton of access to a ton of our global system, as well as the largest movement for social innovators worldwide. So yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Solomon. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Catalyst Now, for inviting us, for giving us this platform. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate also being members of Catalyst Now, which really is a movement. And I'm happy that this day 4, is also a reminder of the pain and the struggles of refugees and migrants around the world. I would venture to say that in large part that is a failure of sort of the global system working in ways that it should, and ways that it should protect, not only protect but also provide opportunities for people. And that's why I think our session today is relevant from that standpoint, because the system is broken and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be more than repaired, but maintained and sustained. And we believe the conversation that you'll hear from us, from presenters, thought reflections will hopefully provide insight on why NGO sustainability of NGOs, or nonprofits as sometimes they're called, is critical, because they are the lifeblood in many communities, provide services, etc. So they provide an essential function, and that's why what is currently happening because of defunding is a huge concern, but also, as you will hear from our presenters and handlers, that there's also an opportunity to shift the paradigm in ways that are actually more Africa-centric, that we see it as an opportunity, not as we don't feel victimized by what is happening. We stand strong to change and shift the paradigm in favor of Africa's sustainability. So let's move to the next slide, please. So as I alluded, we had a meeting in August of 2025 in Kenya. We described the session, the meeting, as the Nairobi Roundtable because it was held in Kenya, where several of us from the U.S. Africa initiatives were visiting, and we wanted to use the discuss implications of defunding, both by the United States, the funding of USAID, but also by other countries and organizations that are taking similar actions in a very unprecedented manner, resulting in shock, to say the least. But like I said, I think we have awoken from the shock and are moving forward. So the roundtable was a collaborative project between the U.S. Africa Initiative, or WSAFI as it's known, that I represent. Professor Andrew, who's also on the panel, as a member of that organization. You'll hear from him. We see ourselves as a trusted intermediary that can facilitate connections between the United States and Africa, in particular the African community, but also other sectors that have an interest in adding value to capacity building and strengthening the social sector in Africa. So that, in essence, is what WSAFI does. We have programs that also bring people together one-on-one, the Global Africa Community Hive. We can be webinars every other month. We are really focused on the issue of sustainability, diaspora engagement, youth empowerment, and also academic initiatives. Those are sort of the four key portfolios of WSAFI as we speak. And we were, of course, joined by a strategic partner that WSAFI has worked with for a number of years. And I don't think I can say that any organization as I would TUI Fund and folks that I've had and we've had the pleasure to work with Wambui Karanja and Charity and Juga are both here representing. So we were able to put together this roundtable in a very collaborative way. TUI Fund, as they're based in Kenya and now in Rwanda, did the light of the work of organizing, inviting, and really convening us so that we had a very, very productive time. So it was a pleasure to see our partners in person versus virtually, which was something that we had done for years. So, and a pleasure to also meet colleagues like David Desi, who you will hear from. He's with the East Africa Philanthropy Network. So without further ado, I will now pass it on to my sister warrior, Wambui Karanja, to say a little bit more about what we can expect today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Solomon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making time to join us in this conversation, because that's really what it's going to be. Just looking at what the roundtable brought out and the issues that are there. So my name is Wambui Karanja. I'm a co-founder at TUI Fund. TUI Fund, which is such a close partner to US Africa initiatives. And basically, TUI Fund, we are a tech-enabled platform. We're an organization that is so passionate about the grassroots. And ours is two main things. We ease the burden of funding to the grassroots through connecting them and access to funding. And then we build capacity directly and indirectly through our partners. We now have at least 220 plus vetted organizations who are on our platform in Kenya and in Rwanda. We have been able to train, build capacity for 80 of those and have 18 directly funded. We really love what we do. We really want to keep growing the grassroots, encouraging grassroots organizations to think of themselves as, as businesses. So really encouraging them and training them to change their models towards more of a social enterprise as opposed to, funding dependent. So I also serve Catalyst Now Kenya as a co-chair. So this is really nice, having been able to be in these sessions and other sessions that I have attended. And because Charity will do most of the presentation about TUI Fund, I think mine is just to welcome you all and to really appreciate the time that you have made to join us to, revisit the roundtable. That's it. Thank you very, very much. And back to you, Solomon. Thank you.
Thank you, Wambui. And thank you again to all the people that have joined us, Usafi, leaders, trustees. I know Helena has joined us, our Chief Officer for Programs, and also Vice Chancellor Gertrude Akapelwa from Zambia, who's one of our trustees. So we're delighted to have them, but also many that are joining us today. So the roundtable brought together many organizations, as you can see on the slide. That was much more than what we anticipated, given that there wasn't much time to plan for this roundtable. But thanks to TUI Fund, Wambui, and Charity, and others, they were able to get their key people and key individuals that represent the different sectors to join us and be part of the conversation. Next slide. You already heard a little bit about Wambui Karanja with TUI Fund. She also happens to be the co-chair of Catalyst Now, the chapter in Kenya, and we're so delighted that where she finds the time, because she is involved in so many organizations, Rotary and others, but her leadership has just been so impeccable. Recently attended the meeting at the United Nations in New York. So she's a person in great demand, and we're very, very fortunate to be working very closely with her. So you'll hear from Wambui more in a little while. Let's go to the next slide. In fact, I'm going to ask Wambui to kind of walk us through a little bit about TUI Fund. Perhaps Wambui or Charity, both of you could collaborate and say more about this very unique organization called TUI Fund that's doing amazing work, not only in Kenya, but also in Rwanda now, and who knows where the next country might be, because you have such a powerful model of working with grassroots organizations. But please, to help the audience understand who you are and what you do, I'm going to give you a chance to say more.
Charity.
Great. Thanks, Solomon. Hi, everyone. My name is Charity Njogona. Can you hear me? Great. My name is Charity Njogona. I lead strategy and communications at TUI Fund. Very happy to have you all join us this evening. This is a good second installation after the roundtable that we had in August. And we are happy to be co-hosting this alongside Usafi. So as Wambui mentioned, TUI Fund is a social enterprise. We call it a social startup. We are a for-profit company, but we operate in the non-profit sector as intermediaries. Our role as intermediaries is to enable the flow of funding, which is either social investment or philanthropic funding to grassroots organizations in Kenya. And our second biggest role as an intermediary is to verify these grassroots organizations to make sure that they are, they're up to par legally, that they do the work that they say they do. So we serve the sector by giving these organizations verification and also giving them visibility. So over the last 3 years, we just turned 3, by the way. This is our 3rd year. And over the last 3 years, we've been able to verify over 300 community organizations. Verifying meaning we've mapped them out, we know what they do, we know their active projects, we know their strengths, we know their weaknesses, and we give them visibility to be able to access funding organizations or individuals. And so far, through partnerships like the ones we have with West Africa Initiatives and others, we've been able to now fund 18 organizations, and we are quite proud about this. When we started TUI Fund, or rather when TUI Fund started, it was a pretty new model, and we really pitched it, and we did a lot of cold calls, a lot of cold emails, and we are happy that where we are, people understand the value proposition we offer to both parties, and we are quite happy now that we have foothold in Kenya, Rwanda. We have been getting a lot of interest from Uganda, and I think that's where we might go next. So we are very happy about that. So apart from verification, we build capacity. We understand these organizations, and we try help them fill the gaps that they have in terms of knowledge. We try to keep them current, keep them aware of the global trends so that they can understand how to position their projects and how to design their projects better. So last year, we with the help of Usafi and the Conservancy Corps, we were able to do a fully, funded ESG and ESG training for 80 organizations. These are actually 80 founders of community organizations. We were able to do this 2 parts. So the first part was a self-paced business, refresher course that we did with the University of Santa Clara. And then the second part was an expert taught 2-day session where we covered ESG with the help of a boutique sustainability firm here in the country. And it was a big success. And some of those organizations have already been funded. And our third input is visibility. So our platform is currently going through an upgrade. We are, putting in the AI, we are putting in the better, user interface. And what this is going to do is it's going to help change makers be able to describe, or rather be able to narrate their work better, use the right keywords and so on. And this will enable them to be matched to opportunities faster and with a little bit more precision. And we are quite proud of this. Lastly, we mobilize funds. Apart from linking organizations, sometimes when we feel like a project is too compelling and very attractive and very funder ready, we call them our milestone projects. We actively work with the leaders of these organizations to fund their work, especially if their work is time bound. So we are currently doing this with 3 organizations. One is school meals programs in one of the informal settlements in Nairobi. Their work is fantastic, time bound, measurable. It has all the markings of being a great success. And I think, Solomon, you had the pleasure of visiting this project when you were around. That is in Mukuru. We've just started working with LVCT, which works in HIV, AIDS intervention. So we are quite proud of that as well. We have a flagship project in Rwanda, and these are the big ticket programs that are really time sensitive and have a lot of promise. And that is how we work at TUI Fund. I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more at the end, but for now I'll allow the rest to speak. I don't want to take up the entire time. Yeah, but thank you.
Thank you, Charity. That was very, very comprehensive review on the work of TUI Fund and the partnership with USAFI and other groups that have also joined us. When TUI Fund and USAFI came together, we were also able to leverage other organizations. You mentioned MOBI Business Institute, which is part of Santa Clara University, the Giving Exchange, which is a funder. So all that was possible. Yeah. So a lot has been accomplished and more to come. Like. So again, just to highlight a little bit more about the collaborative partnership between USAFI and TUI. Next slide, please. And I will ask Wambui to join me here. I do feel that we are on a roll. We are really moving together, two organizations. Like I said, leveraging other organizations, the talent, the resources of others as well. But our two organizations, I will just, Wambui could maybe join and read these slides.
Okay, so so we are two organizations who are, led from a place of passion and commitment by two African leaders. So Solomon Belet, who is originally from Ethiopia, and Wambui from Kenya. And we have been working together actively, for the last 2 to 3 years. So since 2023, 2 years, 2023 to date. And what we have is, we have a synergy that focuses on, let's strengthen the NGO, the social enterprise, the CBO, basically the grassroots in terms of capacity building, leadership, funding. We cannot put our funds into organizations without helping our organizations have a stewardship and governance, structure, and also innovation. So some of the organizations that we are working with are also working towards innovative solutions. And like Charity has mentioned, even we ourselves at TUI Fund are looking to upgrade our platform to be more innovative. From our partner, USAFI, and that is US Africa Initiative, him and his organization have been very instrumental in positioning TUI Fund. Some of our solid partners, and these are partners who we are working with a trust-based model of philanthropy. So the Giving Exchange has been very instrumental in successfully funding some of our organizations on the platform. We were able, again, through USAFI, to do the capacity building through MOBI, which is based out of Santa Clara University. Both of us sit in each other's boards, so strengthening the relationship, ensuring that we are pulling towards the same direction, challenging one another, and really having meetings and discussions and benefiting in a very symbiotic way across board. So I am a trustee, and he's also an advisor on our board. Like you mentioned earlier, we also co-hosted the Roundtable here in Nairobi, and it did have organizations from Nairobi. Zambia was represented by Dr. Akapeloa, so it was a nice representation. So how have we been able to get here? It's mutual trust We met through LinkedIn, so the power of platforms, the power of networking. And then we started having conversations. What are we? Who are we? Where do we want to go? And slowly by slowly, we have been able to establish that very good relationship based on trust and a continuous thirst to keep growing our grassroots. Sorry, I have a bit of a flu. To keep growing our organizations, NGO growth, stability and sustainability and access to, funding. So yeah, that is where we have been, but it is purely trust-based, and we are advocates of trust-based partnership, trust-based philanthropy. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambui. I hope that call goes. Next slide, please. We're going to get into the meat of today's meeting, and who better to lead us in the meaty part of our meeting than Dawit Desi. He's a fellow countryman as well, and it has been a pleasure knowing him and how passionate he is. He doesn't do what he do just to say he did something, but he really does it out of passion, out of conviction. And he is an inspiration, I think, to all of us that are here and that have known him. And I'm going to give him a chance to kind of reflect on the roundtable, because he was the one that we actually looked to really let us know, and from his perspective, what does all this defund mean? What are we going to do, and how are we going to deal with it? How are we going to cope with it? And Dawit was the person that thought about and invited to join us, and he was we're so glad that he said yes out of a very busy schedule to join us. And today he's going to share some reflections and perhaps even some thoughts about where we go. The floor is open for him. David.
Yeah, thank you so much, Salamon, and thank you for those kind words. And I know it was in August, and it's been a few months, and then there certainly have been, I think for me, some fruits that have come out of those conversations we held here in Nairobi. Before I kind of get started and give kind of a highlight of the roundtable, let me give kind of a bit of perspective where EAPN fits in. So East Africa Philanthropy Network is a network that brings together community-based organizations, family philanthropy organizations, corporate philanthropy, and thematic networks across Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. And we recently had an opportunity to expand into the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then basically the work combines research, dialogue, and capacity development, but always with the aim of building a coherent and self-sustaining ecosystem for giving that's underpinned with our own Africa tradition of solidarity, community support, and then the giving that we have. And I think it's within that umbrella when we had the round table, and it was well positioned. It happened after the event, and I think Solomon mentioned it at the beginning, which in many ways I think brought to center how the structure of development and how the ecosystem operated as a whole. And I think one thing that we can clearly say is post-USAID, the entire ecosystem, whether for positive or negative, depending, I think, how people perceived it. And especially, I think, in the deeper conversations and the panel discussions that we've had, they were both those sentiments. There are sentiments that this declining funding landscape that exists currently gives us an opportunity to have an Afrocentric ecosystem. And it's not that we're creating it, but it's one that's always existed. And even if you look at there was a few research that was published a few months ago that actually highlighted that Africa was the most generous continent that have existed. And this wasn't just for 2024, but that's always been the case, that where people gave a large percentage of the income they generated, either be to support families, to communities, and some falling down to organizations. But even when we discuss about the culture of philanthropy, it's one that's woven into, you know, most people that live on this continent, even those who moved out and are currently in the diaspora. If you look at it as of 2024, there was $9.6 billion that was remitted towards the continent as a whole, which shows the power that the community have. So, I mean, I think in the conversations that we have, for me, there was three kind of big thematic areas that came out, which is fundamentally shifting our, oh, am I audible? Okay, fundamentally shifting our framework. That was one. And what we mean by that is to look at the development landscape, to do a deep dive and analysis. And I think Wambui addressed it, and she said we are a trust-driven organization, which in itself has such a poignant way in terms of how the funder and receiver, those relationships work. So in many ways, it's trying to question and address the foundational element of how development is set, how funding flows work, and within those funding flows, who actually determines the priority component of it. So I think at the end of it, I think it's where we start the word trust, but when we go deep down into it, it questions the relationship that the fund giver and the fund receiver have. It shows how ideas flow. It's either from one way to another, or it's an element of co-working. And then I think there is a prime example with TUI Fund and USAFI as well, how that relationship has developed to bring this roundtable, and out of that, the many relationships that has been given. So we come to a point of where and what we mean by when we define our values and how those values have to be shifted. And I think that the roundtable report that was produced gave specific examples of where those shifts have to happen, and then how we have to evaluate the architect of the system that is created. And we are given an opportunity post USAID because it has created such a havoc, but out of that has shown us the fundamental structural flaws that exist within the developmental ecosystem as a whole. So, and then I think the more we move in, and I think Solomon, you mentioned it, right? It's not just about the theoretical discussion component of it, but how do we change that theoretical component to building ecosystems and moving away from projects to actually strengthening communities that we work with. And in many ways, and I think for those who are participating in this conversation and for the discussions that we've had in Nairobi, if you look at the historical analysis of what the development sector has done in terms of impact within the former funding models that existed, the impact of it, with many studies have shown, are limited. But when we're moving toward this trust-based relationship, in many ways, for me, like, it's a simple explanation. You have a community, you have an organization that's embedded with a community that you're working with. And what trust means is you're taking their ideas, their innovation, and philanthropy is playing a catalytic role to advance those ideas. The former way is you have funding structures that existed with specific hidden agendas that come in, and you're trying to implement solutions that were not identified or that's not given approval by local communities, and which at the end, where the result of it shows that these projects in most cases did not succeed. So for me, I'm one of those, like, yes, if you look at the statistics, the funding landscape, even if you remove the USA component and you're looking at the UK, Sweden, Germany for their 2026 policies, those ODAs are going to further decline from where they were. So this is a new reality that we're stepping in, but we were, for me, we stepped in with hope and optimism. And the reason for that is that because the previous model hasn't shown the positive impact for the amount of money that was spent, we're giving a new opportunity to imagine a new future that's Afrocentric in terms of not only the relationship of the funding, but how organizations work together. And in many ways, we have multiple examples, even with TUI Fund in terms of the organization they funded, how they funded them, and what solutions those organizations are doing, which is going to end up being the data points that we can use to advocate for this new cycle that we're coming in. So, and I think, as Wambui has said, this is a conversation, right, where we're acknowledging the difficulties that's caused because of the shift that happened, but at the same time, seeing new possibility, new ways, and new innovations that can be done that's locally rooted, that have an Afrocentric component to it, and then how it's not just saying if we get funding or if we get grants, we'll be able to do this, but the time that we're spending together, the ideas that we're coming with, those are the investments that we're making to developing this new reality that's coming. So let me pause here and yeah, give the mic back to you, Solomon.
Thank you, David. That was very powerful, as I think we all expect. When you speak, it really resonates, I think, with us because it is so powerful. I just want to read excerpts from the report that I think David pretty much summarized in his own words. But so one of the quotes in the report, the Nairobi Roundtable report reads, "Sometimes we forget that the very system we are working in was not built to deliver development for us. It was built for other purposes. We are deconstructing," and my addition, "and reconstructing something that resists us by design." So not easy to make the shift, but it's doable. We have to reconstruct. And then the other quote from the report reads, "Resilience would not come from reforming donor practices alone, but from building parallel African-led systems of support." And that's exactly what EAPN is doing, the East Africa Philanthropy Network is doing, is looking cultural practices, looking at those indigenous ways of supporting and using that as a platform to build and scale philanthropy in ways that make sense, in ways that are value driven. So just wanted to read those excerpts. We're gonna go again. Thank you all our guests that are here. So Ade Olowo, one of our Usafi followers, he's here. And I've mentioned Vice Chancellor Akapuela from Victoria Falls University. Thank you for joining us. I see James from Innovation. So appreciate all of you that made the time to join us. Now that you've heard from Dawit and have a better understanding of what the context was for holding this roundtable, so the question is, so what? What are you going to do about it? What ideas did you come up with that might actually move the needle in the right direction? Which is, I think, what Dawit is saying. We need to change. We need to move the needle in the right direction. So to do that, we have two distinguished presenters in Professor Andrew Semwanga. He is with USAFI, the US Africa Initiatives, has been with USAFI for at least a couple of years. He's one person that I turn to all the time for advice, guidance, because he has been in various sectors in business and academia as Vice Chancellor. He has a very distinguished background, and so we're very lucky to have him be part of USAFI. And then also hear from Professor Scott Bellows that we met with when we were at University in Africa, and both of them are going to kind of share with us some ideas for actions and solutions as we reframe and redesign the sustainable development strategies that are going to work in the African context. So without further ado, Professor Andrew, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. I welcome all the visitors to this very, very important session. I am Andrew Semwanga. I live in Uganda, and I work as the Academic Initiatives Officer for Africa in USAFI. So I welcome you all to this very important session. As you've heard from the previous presenters, we have a challenge, a funding challenge. Funding are getting less and less every day. So what do we do? How do we support our communities when the funding is declining? Now, during the roundtable in Nairobi, we had a lot of discussions on how we can go about this challenge. So we have put down some of these possible strategic solutions, and have broken them into 4 categories. We need capital. Of course, capital is very key. We shall need capital because it is the capital that is declining. So we need to raise capital if we are to sustain operations for our civil societies. Also, participants came up with another solution. We realized that, yes, we need money, but we need to do something about systems. Some of the systems are not working well. That's why we have heard that in TUI Fund, they also help the grassroots societies in terms of leadership, in terms of governance, because that's a challenge. Yes, we may have money, but now the system must also be proper. So participants in Nairobi identified number 2, or part B, as one of the key areas that requires to be worked on. We also identified another area which we can pursue to engage in partnerships. You need partnership. You need to work together. This time, you should not work alone as an island. We are not islands. So this came up, and now there is a call for civil societies to work together and pool their resources. We also identified that they have to innovate. We need to innovate in terms of incubating ideas, and eventually these ideas can be developed, and then they go into accelerators. So these came up. So we grouped these strategic solutions into 4 categories, and then we are going to go deep in the next slides. Thank you. Next slide, please. Under capital, we got quite a number of ideas, as you can see. But of course, we have limited time. We cannot go through all those areas that were identified under capital. So what I'm going to do is to concentrate on at least 2. Earlier speaker, the earlier presenter, has talked about African ecosystem, Africa or Afrocentric ecosystem. And what does that mean? That you need to get funding from Africa through the Africans. So you need to tap into African private capital. Yes, in every country, you have people who have money, they have resources, and we are saying that now money is dwindling away from Europe, from the US, and other donors. You need now to look at your own people, the African private sector. Now, the private sector could be companies in Africa. They could be parastatals in Africa, or they could be individuals in Africa. So we can tap into that private capital. And this capital could be in the form of grants to civil societies. It could be short-term loans to be paid back. It could be in the form of equity as part of shareholding. So this is an area which we identified in Nairobi as a key source of funding. We also saw another very important item of creating entrepreneurial philanthropy. And I'm happy that the previous presenter has told us that Africa has been a giver all over the centuries. We've been giving funding. We've been sharing. So the African spirit of sharing is not something new. It has been there. So we want again to go back and say, please, let us share what you have. Because that spirit of giving is indigenous in Africans. So we want again to tap into that so that people can give freely to civil societies to develop communities. So as you can see, there are so many areas, and because of limited time, we cannot go through them, but we have identified that these 2, if they can be properly utilized, we are going to move a step forward in mobilizing funding for African civil societies. Next slide. Systems. As I mentioned, yes, you may have money, but you need to put your house in order. You need to have systems. You must comply with the requirements. These could be national requirements. These could be local requirements. So you must comply. So compliance was identified as a very key limiting factor that can limit the development of a civil society. Yes, money is very important, but also systems. We need to have proper systems that help us to comply with the legal requirements from government, from our regulators, because all these civil societies have national regulators that provide them with guidelines, and they must comply. So we realized, among other things, that we need to strengthen governance. And when you talk of governance, we need to separate powers of the shareholders, the board of directors, and management. We need to separate their powers. And this is governance. Again, governance requires that we also engage with stakeholders. We need to build up that kind of framework, which I'm sorry to say is still lacking in most of our civil societies. And we thank TUI Fund because you are building the systems for your respective civil societies. We thank you very much, because these are key. So build governance structures and also build management. Remember, management are the people on the day-to-day running of the civil societies. They must have structures also, policies, processes, and procedures to run the civil societies on a day-to-day basis. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, we have a number of items here under systems, but because of limited time, we cannot go for each one of them. So I am stopping here for the time being, and I would like to go back to Professor Solomon to invite the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Andrew. That was amazing that you are able to put these 4 ideas, 4 actions, solutions in such a very succinct fashion. So I think we've come up with a new formula. CSPI, Capital, Systems, Partnerships, and Innovation. We're going to start playing around with these ideas and really deepening them, because you're just giving us the framework, and I think the devil is in the details. So, but we have I think, a nice framework that we could play around with and systematize. So thank you so much. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, we have not even heard from Professor Scott, and I jumped a bit here with excitement, but Professor Scott is going to tell us the other 2 components of this formula, the partnership and the innovation. Professor Scott, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Please join us, and we will stop sharing the slide and bring you on. Jill, can you do that?
All right. So good evening from Nairobi, everyone, or good morning if you're in California. I hope maybe, Solomon, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you, so we'd like to see you. So,
right.
Jill, if you have to get rid of what
I'm at the ambassador of Finland to Kenya. There is a large dinner going on for European donors that we are networking at. So I am standing out by the swimming pool at night.
Okay.
So I can do this presentation. So
Wonderful.
So it's kind of dark. There's not enough light. I apologize. But never miss an opportunity to fundraise, especially in this environment. And I echo everything that Professor Andrews has said. Of course, Solomon, Dawit, all the TUI Fund folks are amazing. We've been hit hard by the USAID loss. As a nation, Kenya has lost over 50,000 jobs just from those who were employed directly and indirectly through USAID. And that's not to mention millions of beneficiaries of scholarship, of primary school reading, of HIV and AIDS medicines, of emergency nutrition for refugees. So Kenya as a nation was hit hard. Us as an institution were also hit. I was the chief of party on several USAID grants that our university ran. So it was a very sad time. And it's only recently, last week on Friday, we have found finally from the European Union is going to step in and fund some of what USAID had dropped the ball on. I guess I shouldn't say USAID. It wasn't their fault. It was a certain president that shall not be named dropped the ball on these development initiatives, because we have tens of thousands of youth, or youth, or what we call them in Kenya. In the U.S., we would say young adults, who were very disappointed because they were promised job connections, they were promised technical and vocational training, and we could not provide that because USAID collapsed. So the European Union is stepping in to support us with 5 million euros. It's not as much as what we had with USAID, but it's very welcome. So we're very pleased with this. And you're right, here in Kenya, many donors are stepping out, not just in Kenya, but across Africa. FCDO, which is the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office with the British, they are stepping back. Sweden is pulling most stuff out. The Finnish, which is where I am right now, at the ambassador's house, they're pulling back most of it because they have to increase their contributions to NATO because they have just joined NATO. So they're worried about defense, so they're reallocating budgets. Great people, but it's hard. The Netherlands is shrinking funds as well. Some like the Estonians and the Germans and the European Union are actually stepping in the gap and increasing a bit, but it's not not filling the gap. So, like on the slide that was just before the slides were turned off, there was a note. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Jill. You see here the pool available resources and partnerships. In order to get the European Union money, there were hundreds of NGOs in Kenya, struggling to try to continue to support their beneficiaries. Hundreds of NGOs applied for this grant, hundreds. We were very fortunate to win. Among hundreds, we were shortlisted to the top 3 and then submitted a very, very long over 100-page proposal for the final. And we were just selected last week on Friday. But we did not do it alone. We formed a consortium, a larger consortium than what we would have done under the old funding, paradigm a year ago, right? We might have had 1 or 2 partners. Now we chose 5 partners. So there were 5, us as a university, a nonprofit university here in Kenya, and as well as 4 NGOs. And we went in together in a larger consortium than is usual. And the European Union was very pleased with that. Many of the other people who sought, the other NGOs who were seeking the funding, they went in the traditional more 2 or 3 organizations and consortiums. So I completely agree on pooling available resources, partnering together, and it's a very difficult time. Also, we're trying to piggyback on some things that the Embassy of Finland, or I should say more properly, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Finland and the German government's GIZ, they're really ramping up. Sorry, the Finnish are kind of pulling out a bit because of the NATO issue, but the Germans stepping up. So we're trying to go into the same regions that they're going into, and doing kind of co-funding. So they'll fund some things, we'll fund some things. We're asking the government of Kenya to step up, and one of the counties, Mombasa County, which is at the Kenyan coast, has agreed to co-fund up to 50 million shillings. 50 million shillings is what, about $42,000 towards youth and youth entrepreneurship. And then we're putting in, millions of euros. So, so we're trying unique things. The Conrad Hilton Foundation is stepping in to help fund others who other young adults who've lost their entrepreneurship support because of the U.S. government funding collapse. So it's a new dawn. It's a hard environment, but partnerships absolutely the way to go. I think long term for the continent. Of course, I was born in America, but I've lived here in Kenya for 25 years, so I'm really Kenyan, American Kenyan. But our long term for Africa is, of course, more indigenous funding, which is the TUI Fund model. And what TUI Fund is doing is fantastic, and that as that grows over the years, I think that's the future for our continent. We also see here support partnerships with connective infrastructure like data monitoring and evaluation tools. There was one downside to U.S. government funding in that the monitoring and evaluation requirements were so intense that so much time and effort and money had to be put into that, that other funders are not as sorry, many people are walking by the swimming pool and getting distracted. I'm trying to tell them, no, I'm on a conference call. I'm participating. Anyway, but other funders are not as strict on the monitoring and evaluation. So we can, and also I think, to be honest, I don't know why every organization in the usual consortiums have to do their own monitoring and evaluation. I think consortium-wide can more pool resources for monitoring and evaluation, also pool resources on impact assessments and so forth. So in this new dawn, absolutely the way to go. There are some NGOs who are trying very hard, like AmRef Health Africa, which is the largest public health NGO across Africa. They're trying very hard to go into the social entrepreneurship space to kind of help fill that funding gap. They were providing, support for millions of people across Africa who are victims of sexual-based violence, or people living with HIV and AIDS support. And now they're trying to have these social entrepreneurship programs to fill in the gap and fundraise and so forth. So an organization that used to do very well with the entrepreneurship side, which was called We Charity, this Canadian NGO, they actually imploded because of a scandal with former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But before that happened, they were probably the best. If you go online and read about them before their scandal, they had social entrepreneurship activities across Kenya, Tanzania, some countries in West Africa. And those social entrepreneurship activities almost paid for all of their support for thousands and thousands of school-age children and feeding programs and educating and books and teacher support. So the social entrepreneurship is, a way to go. You've heard various speakers tonight talk about it, but it's a heavy lift, and it takes a mentality shift because, running an NGO is very different type of mentality than running a social business. And it often doesn't cross over. And NGO boards that also monitor a social entrepreneurship component that's expanded, you often don't get the same kind of governance. So I've seen some struggle with that. Yes, if we can go to the next slide, please, Jill. All right. And then, of course, innovation. I think we're kind of already implying all these innovations. We do partner with lots of incubators. We run our own accelerator. We are now accepting NGOs into the accelerator, which is unusual. Usually it's for-profit entrepreneurs or social for-profit entrepreneurs. With this new European Union funding, across the target counties across Kenya, we will be, heavily targeting incubators and accelerators, and even using the Kenyan equivalent of community colleges, which in Kenya we call those TVETs, the Technical Vocation Educational Training Institutes, to try to have sustainability with some of these incubators and put, these incubators and so forth, accelerators, more robustly into these TVETs, so that even if the nonprofit and the for-profit accelerators and incubators across the country, if they eventually do lose funding or whatnot, it's already built into the ecosystem that is supported by the government of Kenya. So until this USAID collapse, I never before asked a government, the Kenyan government, a county government, anything for money or co-funding. It's always, we would come to them and say, this donor would like to fund activities. What do you suggest? Now it's like, hey, let's go in together because we're all short on money. Let's go in together. So it's, it's an innovative time. It's exciting and scary at the same time, but a lot of hard work. And we look forward to the future, of course, with USAFI, with TUI Fund, and of course, Catalyst Now. And, you all are great. And yeah, I will stop talking because as a professor, you talk forever, but you guys are not students. We're all colleagues. So Solomon, I'll spare you all my bloviating, and I'll stop now.
Yeah, please don't go too far because we might have you come back. Don't start swimming yet, okay?
Well, I'm in a suit and it's nighttime, and there's lots of people in fancy dresses around, so I don't think I'm swimming.
No swimming yet, Professor. As we swim in your ideas, yours and Professor Andrew's ideas, I mean, you put us into a swimming pool now, where we're thinking about capital, partnership, innovation, systems. How could I forget systems? So anyway, we're in that pool together with you, and so we would like you to maybe come back and make final remarks at the end. But let's go next to the next presentation, and I think it may be Charity, but let's take a look at the slide. Yes, it is Charity Njuguna, Strategy and Communications Lead for TUI Fund. I have gotten to know Charity over the years. She is just an amazing leader, young leader, that is making a huge difference in our work and our collective work. So she's going to talk a little bit about what is the onward and upward sort of trajectory for based on all this. Again, kind of summarizing what came out of the roundtable. Charity?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Solomon.
Next slide, please. Next slide.
Yeah. So I think I will echo what has been said by Professor Scott and Professor Andrews. And I think I have 2 points to make. Exactly what is happening in this room where we are, all of us. And the first thing that we are supposed to be exploring together is the establishment of SPAN, which is strengthening collaboration between academia and nonprofits. So this is supposed to be a three-way between USAFI, USIU, and ourselves, where we design a program where local nonprofits and grassroots organizations can benefit from the wealth of knowledge that USIU has and the structure and the diaspora structure that USAFI can bring on board. So that is ongoing. I know I'm supposed to have done a paper with Professor Scott and his team. We haven't yet really gotten down to it, but the key outcome for this is we are supposed to be leveraging our institutional assets and contributing to even data and nonprofit policy as we prop up these local organizations. Just to add on that, when Wambui was in New York for UNGA, as we call it, she met the Dean of Massey University in Brooklyn. He also mentioned that he'd like to find a way to involve his students in the work that TUI Fund does, and especially when we're talking about how can we help these organizations, build their financial sustainability. And this is also something that we have just started discussing. So this partnership between academia and nonprofit is something that we see being one of the biggest things to come out of this roundtable, and leveraging all our efforts in this, in this room. And secondly, TUI Fund is unveiling a consortium model. It seems that we are all on the same wavelength. The reason why we're doing this is we have all these many grassroots organizations, and we've barely scratched the surface. And each of them works in its own, intervention area, in its own community. But a lot of the work they do is complementary amongst themselves, and they could all benefit from coming together, signing MOUs, designing a project that all their intervention areas, and most importantly also share back-end costs, share also their M&E, impact assessment, share all that. And this will allow them, or this will help them to attract bigger funding and pool resources, and of course, achieve bigger impact. So those are the 2 points that we have started working on as a team. And I'd like to add that tomorrow we are actually hosting a session. It's going to be noon Kenyan time, and it's a special session because we are discussing beyond grants, so other financial instruments for sustainability of this sector. And we're going to be hosting Instiglio. I don't know if you know Instiglio. Instiglio are very big on result-based financing, and they've done a lot of partnerships for the nonprofit sector and government, but they're going to be bringing down that concept to local organizations, how everyone can start thinking in the results-based financing direction. That's a big one. We'll also be having Margin of Ufanisi. Margin of Ufanisi basically means water and development. It's a local NGO. It's been in existence for more than 20 years. They were the pioneers of the WASH enterprise model. Back then, when people, were barely getting into the social enterprise space, they managed to bring on board an enterprise model to support their work in water and sanitation and health. And they've employed thousands of people. They attend to millions of people. So they're going to be talking a lot about their experience in pivoting that way. So this is also part 3, or rather my 3rd point on this slide. So please join us tomorrow as we talk about new models. And yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Charity. Please indicate or add the link for tomorrow's event if you can.
Yeah.
Because that's wonderful. I mean, it really goes to show continuity. We're doing this today, and then tomorrow you're actually jumping into the nitty-gritty of what it means to go beyond grants. I also want to just say about SCAN, strengthening collaboration between academia and nonprofits. It was sort of a concept that was developed by USAFI with academia and SAFI and TUI Fund working together as lead organizations, but it does not preclude others from joining us, other partners from joining us, whether they're NGOs or international NGOs, Rotary, local government. I think Professor Scott was alluding to the role that local government could play. Philanthropy, of course, David. Would love to have philanthropy be a partner in that endeavor as well as business. So even though we have sort of lead agencies, we're also envisioning really a broader sort of sector participation to the extent that we can. And really, I mean, I think what is happening is that we're taking an idea from the shelf to the streets. We had been talking about SCAN, right, as a concept, and it was just waiting to be deployed, waiting to be realized. And now we're actually going to hopefully see that happen. So again, it is because of the collaboration that we have with TUI Fund, USIU Africa, and USAFI kind of working together. So let's go to the next slide. I know we're getting close to the end, but I'd like our panelists to just read and thematically sort of say a little bit maybe about these things that we now have showing on the slide. So we'll start with that.
Okay. So I think for me, in terms of innovative approaches to localized philanthropy, especially I think when it comes to our network that exists, that there's been three specific areas that we've been focusing on. And one is the public-private philanthropic framework, which trying, and in many ways, it kind of have an alliance with ABPA. That's another organization that's been focusing on impact investing. So it's moving away from the grant world to investment. That's one element. And the other one is we're in the process of creating, currently we have 3 models, regional thematic basket funds. That's another innovative approach that we're going for. And the model is trying to incorporate 50% of it coming from domestic resources. That could be from individuals, local philanthropic entities that exist. And my favorite one, and I think this is an element that has sustainability written in it, but is one that's a bit difficult to accomplish, is where organizations are envisioning endowments. So, and then I think we actually do have an example within our membership. KCDF is one, and they've had an endowment for a long time. Then there is a cohort that we have of community foundations that we're working with across the countries that I mentioned earlier. Where, so the idea of it is, and if you take KCDF, for example, they've reached a point where they can sustain their organization at 20% for a lifetime because of the investment that's been done in endowment, the returns that it's getting. And it's a real shift away from the traditional approach. But where we have found issues is on that seed capital to get the endowment started. So, and I think that there's still opportunities, and I think there's experiments. And one of the things that I think in the upcoming year for 2026 that EAP is trying to focus on is actually being able to produce knowledge pieces and researches that actually shows these things that we're talking about in practice, and identifying those organizations. So let me stop here and pass it to you, back to you, Solomon.
Professor Andrew, please, you're next.
Yes, Africans are the perfect architects of their development trajectories. Yes, that's true. That's true. We've talked about it. We've talked about African capital. African capital. Please don't go outside. Mobilize capital within Africa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I think I agree with that conclusion that charity alone can't create dependency. And just allow me to just open it a little bit with regard to TUI Fund. That for us, we acknowledge that charity, it centers around urgency. Things have to be done fast. And often it leaves a lot of systems unchanged. So that's why we do not have a rescue or savior mentality when we go to our communities. We are thinking that, we want to build capacity, we want to strengthen, their operations. So, and we acknowledge that they don't need rescue. The organizations are not looking to be rescued. What they need are resources, the voice, structure, and the room to lead. So as we close, that's why TUI Fund continues to really amplify trust-based capacity strengthening, where we invest in capable local actors. The consortium model that we are now working with is really identifying the organizations that are within the ecosystem and picking the capable local actors, bringing them together, leading us to higher funding. So that's how we move from charity to co-creation to shared ownership and sustainable development. That's it.
Thank you, Wambui. You took us much further, which is wonderful, that elaboration. By the way, we love charity. We are a charity in Jaguna.
Yeah.
But when we say we're not putting down charity, our own charity here, but it's charity. But the alternative, I think, to charity or dependency is starting a new paradigm of authentic African development, and that's, I think, is coming across loud and clear. And then Professor Scott, I'm sure he's standing by the swimming pool, but read his line because it reads, "We must approach sustainable development with an ecosystem perspective. Stop chasing dollars and be strategic on the basis." I think he knows how to do that, and USIU Africa is leading the effort, as we heard from him. So let's go to the next slide because we're running out of time. So contact information, myself and Professor Andrew, our contacts for Wasafi, and of course Wambui and Charity are the contacts for TUI Fund. Next slide. Now we have a little bit of time for questions, comments, concerns, and suggestions, and I'm going to go straight to my dear friend Helena Alamu, who is with Usafi, to share with us some thoughts, comments, and questions she has. Helena?
Thank you, Solomon. I appreciate it. This was great. Thank you for bringing this up. I mean, we've been having this discussion for quite a bit. So good to see my team, my colleagues from Kenya, from here, from all over the world. I think I'm Helena, by the way. I'm the Deputy Chief of Program for Usafi. I guess the question that I have, it could be even for us, for myself, is when we're talking about localization of funding, like what does that look like? I know Dawit spoke about it a little bit. So what do you see as like the next step for, for people in this space to kind of like, look forward? What do we need to do? And relating to that question, what do you see the role of the diaspora? And I'm asking this from, from my all selfish reasons also, being based in the US and really wanting to contribute to, Africa's development and been in that space for years. So what does that look like for us and for people who are really looking into giving the skills and the connections and the, to facilitate in that process. I know what Scott said, 50,000 jobs lost in Kenya. That's unbelievable, but I also see it as that's a resource right there. So I'm curious what the Kenyan government or what the community is trying to use that, how they're planning to use that, because hey, 50,000 jobs, 50,000 people working in that space for years is a huge resource for that country. So how is, the country trying to pivot with that resource sitting on that one? So I'll just stop here, Solomon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Helena. You are really an important player in Safi's growth and development, and appreciate that you could join us today. So the question on localization and the impact in terms of the loss of jobs, which translates into resources. Who would like to take that up? Dawi, Wambui, Charity, Scott,
Yeah,
Professor Scott?
I can give just a little brief, I think, to answer the first part of Lena's question is, I think, so even if you look at EAPN's history, there has been family foundations that have existed going back all the way to the 1950s, So even if you just take Kenya alone, you have Safaricom Foundation, you have INM Foundation, you have KCB Foundation, you have KCPF Community Foundation. There was already a very strong presence of either be corporate funding now that's turned into foundations, and there's quite a lot of family foundations that exist. I think the question for me, I think we need to focus on is, does the current existing NGO model as it stands, is that going to be fundable by local resources? And I think that's where there's a duality to it. We are having an ongoing conversation with Wings that started yesterday, and we had one today, and we're going to finish tomorrow. And we've had all these discussions, right? Where does the diaspora fund that comes into this continent, which accounts for $96 billion as of 2024, which is a huge amount. It exceeds ODA and other things. But the true question is, does the existing NGO model would be able to accommodate that? And this is a personal answer, and I think this is even in the diaspora or the local money that exists here, I don't think would be able to support the current NGO structure. If you maybe transition into social enterprises, these hybrid models that exist where you actually have community-led, community-rooted elements of it, or the other component would be where you do have kind of semi-established businesses that require kind of a growth capital. That's another opportunity. So I think when we look at what the future would look like, we really have to dismantle the last 40 years of how grant-driven things have worked. And this is where like academic institutions would be kind of a standout unique in this, but I think for the most standard structural NGOs that exist today would not be fundable with these new existing models that we're discussing. So let me pause.
Thank you. It's very, very enlightening, illuminating. I mean, the NGOs are grant dependent by design, so perpetuating that model doesn't make sense. But how do you redesign? I think it's a question of redesigning beyond grants, as fund is now creating sort of a platform for that discussion. But we
I think for me, I would just say it from how, from the TUI Fund angle. I think the localization is really just putting funds direct to organization, flexible support, reorganizing the bureaucracies and really looking at the community actors as strategic partners, not just implementers. So trust-based, that's why we keep on talking about trust-based. Let's look at consortiums and ecosystem models. For the diaspora, I mean, huge underused asset. Perhaps we have to think of remittances. The remittances encourage them to co-create development infrastructure as opposed to subsistence, monies for consumption. So yeah, in short, that's my submission.
Yeah. My good friend Alma would relate to what you just said with the African diaspora network. They're moving from remittances, not stopping remittance, but really developing funding, diaspora funding, as sort of the next way to support the need in Africa. And I know they just had a LinkedIn session yesterday on that very topic. So, so who else would like to comment? I think we're almost 2 minutes away from the end of our session. This has been a powerful, wonderful, robust discussion. And I know we spent some time initially just talking about who we are, but like I said, the meat of this conversation has really been about what resulted from our discussions in Nairobi, the Nairobi Roundtable. That report is available if any of you are interested and have not seen it. There's a lot that's contained in that report. Please check it out. And this is to be continued, I think, and the sustainability of the nonprofit sector, the CSO sector is an important one. So SAFI will definitely prioritize this as a priority area of focus for us. And of course, that means working with EAPN, with TUI Fund partners. We're in it to be part of a larger community discussion, not to monopolize the topic in any sense of the word. We're in this together. So I think that's what I wanted to say. Jill, what's the next slide after this? Do you there's go ahead. Go ahead.
I think,
Or Solomon, if you don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jill.
no, I was just going to say that you have your hand raised, so please go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted
Scott?
to respond to the question that was asked. Thank you. I just wanted to respond to the question that was asked to me about the 50,000 plus NGO workers who are out of work. It's very hard to mobilize that many people as a resource. So they've not been absorbed. There's been some efforts by some corporates to hire some because, if you work for USAID or with one of the implementing partners, you're very good at project management and so forth. But as a country, it's been very hard to absorb. Many of these people are now selling shoes on Instagram. They're farming, going and up at what we would say up country, or in America we would say going to the country, and planting an acre of corn or maize. So it's been really hard for the economy to absorb that loss, especially when there's such a high official unemployment rate as well. But I agree, it's a resource that it's really sad to see lost, and I hope over time those skills can come back and really grow the country. So Helena, that was a great question. Also, just to touch on briefly really quickly what Dawit had said about local foundations. I agree, local foundations are fantastic. However, most of those foundations that you mentioned get their funding from MasterCard Foundation. So they get their funding from Canada, and then they onward spend it. So they're not foundations in the traditional sense that we think of in the US. So they're still not getting a high enough proportion of their own charitable funds from the philanthropy of their founding corporate parent, which is kind of sad. So hopefully it moves in that direction. And then Wambui, what you said about the flexibility of funds, you hit the nail spot on. Wambui, that was very smart. The Hewlett Foundation has funded the Advocacy Accelerator, which is a Pan-African movement. And one of the studies is a lot of these foreign donors make funds so rigid and according to their own, what they want, what they think the country needs. But, what about communities deciding for themselves what they need and then funders being okay to fund that? So I agree with you, Wambui. But the European Union on Monday held a session at the University of Nairobi, and there were about 100 people who went, and there were over 1,000 people who participated online and talking about funding and so forth. And some of the comments by Kenyan researchers and Kenyan NGOs was that Kenyan funds, when it's donated by the Kenyan government or Kenyan funders, is actually less flexible than foreign funding, which I thought was interesting because I kind of contradicted some of what the Advocacy Accelerator and Hewlett Foundation are pushing for. So I just wanted to make those comments, but thank you all. Great team here. Solomon, thank you for pulling everyone together. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Scott. Now you can go swimming, finally. But yeah, thanks everyone. Please join me in thanking this wonderful panel of presenters, Professor Andrew Mwanga from Uganda. I like the rhyming of that. Mr. Dawit Desi from East Africa Philanthropy Network, EAPN, the strategy person behind EAPN's work, Wambui Karanja from TUI Fund, and Charity and Juguna from TUI Fund, Professor Scott, I think, and myself for the opportunity that I had to moderate this session. This has been sort of something we've been thinking about, as to what we're gonna do. We did meet and we talked, and then what next is gonna be next. So I think we've delivered on the promise to at least engage and have a conversation, and there's more to come. So with that, I want to thank now for hosting us, for supporting this effort for the Change Maker Week, which is powerful. I encourage you to watch the recordings of the other sessions that are happening. Jill, back to you.
No, that's it. Just thank all of you. Thank you to everyone for coming, for speaking. We'll be uploading the recording to YouTube hopefully next week. And yeah, please find us on Facebook, apply to be a member, or Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, anywhere, we're everywhere. Apply to be a member, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
evening, folks,
Bye,
brothers
everyone.
and sisters, Kenya and Uganda and Africa. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Alrighty.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.